You know what? Maybe we'll try to get going, get through the opening and the announcements and whatnot, and then we'll see how Selectman Anderson's doing. Is that okay with everybody? Shaking heads. Great.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. 6:30. Welcome everyone. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, today's March 18, 2025 meeting of the Wrentham Select Board shall be conducted remotely via Zoom. The agenda posted on the town's website identifies how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. As a preliminary matter, this is Select Board Vice Chair Chris Gallo. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Selectman Jim Anderson.
Anderson here.
Selectman Bill Harrington.
Harrington here.
Selectwoman Michelle Rouse.
I was here.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. I got new speakers, so I feel like Selectman Botash with the
Need a couple more screens.
Yeah. I love them. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. I got to take interim off. Town Manager, Michael King.
Present.
Assistant Town Manager, Greg Enos.
Present.
Executive Assistant, Amanda Vassapolo. I think she's here. I know she's
Present.
here. Hey, okay. So at this time, how are we doing with Selectman Anderson?
Yeah, so I can hear you. I can't see you.
And I miss seeing that handsome face, Jim.
Yeah, me too. But because of my my tech savviness, we'll have to just go with this for tonight.
That's fine. Are you able to get the packet information?
I did.
Okay. So if you're okay, I'm okay. We'll keep going, even though know that your face is missed. All right, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to go to tab number 1 and ask our clerk, Selectman Harrington, to read the announcements.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The agenda items for this evening: Planning Board public comment period regarding the proposed multi-family overlay district zoning bylaw amendment is now open through April 2nd. Send your comments to planning@wrentham.gov. Norfolk County Mosquito District will potentially be conducting helicopter applications of bioracial laveritis to control mosquito larvae starting April 1st through October 31st, 2025. Wrentham Roderick Building Project Community Forum will be held virtually via Zoom on Wednesday, March 19th, starting at 7 p.m. Residents are invited to participate in discussion on the Roderick School feasibility study. A voter registration for annual town election will be held on Friday, March 28th at the Fisk Library from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The annual town election will be held on Monday, April 7th. Polls open at 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Delaney Elementary School. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay. We do, just keep in mind, someone remind me that we do have a public hearing at 6:45 and then another one at 7. So I want to be respectful of that. But in the interim, I think we could go to tab number 2, which is approval of the minutes. At this time, the Vice Chair would entertain a motion to approve the March 5th, 2025 open session meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
So there's a motion made by Selectwoman Rouse, second by Selectman Harrington. We'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse?
Rouse, yes.
Selectman Anderson?
Anderson will abstain.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Selectman Harrington?
Harrington, yes.
Chris Gallo, yes. Motion carries 3 with 1 abstention. At this time, it looks like we have time to go to tab number 3. And this is an appointment of Lauren Gordon to the Open Space Committee. We have a volunteer application for Lauren in our packet. We have a letter from Alan Selling, the chair of the Open Space. I'm assuming that everyone has had time to read both of those. Is Mrs. Gordon here with us this evening?
I'm here.
Hi, Mrs. Gordon.
Hi, Mr. Gallo.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. And thank you for being on, and thank you for putting your hat in the ring to volunteer for our great town. At this time, I don't have any questions. I happen to know Lauren very well. Our families are friends. Our kids, our boys are friends. I know her and her husband, great people in town. And I've firsthand witnessed her incredible knowledge that she's talked to us about on her resume. But I would like to give the other select board members an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have of you. So at this time, I'd like to start with Selectwoman Rouse.
Hi, Lauren. Nice to meet you. Thank you for volunteering for this position. We've had the pleasure of reading your application, but those that are attending the meeting or listening at a later time don't have that privilege. So I'd love you just to give a little overview of who you are and your experience, which is quite extensive.
So yeah, I moved to Wrentham 9 years ago. Spent the last 10 years working for Mass Audubon. I was the regional director there, overseeing the properties from Quincy down through Norfolk, which included, having the nature centers as open spaces, community engagement facilities, protecting additional land. So it's something that I recently left that position. I'm now working as the director of the Audubon in Rhode Island, and have been very passionate about open space in the community, as well as I'm really passionate about just kind of legacy and what we leave to, as Chris said, I have a 11-year-old son. So thinking about, what we're leaving our future generations here. So that's what inspired me to get involved with the Open Space Committee.
Great. Thank you so much. No further questions.
Okay. Selectman Anderson.
No questions, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay. Selectman Harrington.
No question, just want to point out, very impressive resume and greatly appreciate you volunteering. It's always great to see local folks getting involved, and it's greatly appreciated.
Great.
Thank
And one thing I'll add, by no means should this add to the support for Lauren and her vote, but happens to make one of the best apple pies I've ever had in my life. Just putting it out there. So at this time, the vice chair, if there's any further discussion, by the way, none, I'm seeing nobody. Mike, do you have anything to add? Greg, nothing? Okay. We did see Alan Selling's letter. We saw Lauren's application. So no further questions. At this time, the vice chair would entertain a motion to appoint Lauren Gordon to the Open Space Committee for a term effective immediately and expiring June 30th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
So there's a motion made by Selectwoman Rouse and a second by Selectman Anderson. Any further discussion? Being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse. I think that was a yes.
Yes.
Selectman Anderson.
Anderson's a yes.
Selectman Harrington.
Harrington, yes.
Chris Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations, Lauren. Does she need to get sworn in by the by our wonderful
Yes, she does.
Cindy Thompson? Okay, Lauren, so you need to go to town hall, get sworn in before you attend the meeting.
Okay.
All right. Welcome
Thank you.
aboard, and thanks for
Thank you.
volunteering.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Have a great night.
You too.
Okay, moving right along. Looks like we have 4 minutes. Mike, do we have time to tackle the interviews and appointments of the Board of Registrars, do you think? Or
That might be a little bit of explanation on
you know
that.
what? Yeah, you're right. Let's jump to something more fun. Let's go to the discussion of the dedication of the Select Board meeting room to Joseph F. Botash II. So this board obviously lost its chair earlier this year in a courageous battle with cancer. And although we'll never be able to fill Joe's spot, we've tried to move on and do the best we can in his memory. He's left an incredible impression on so many people in the town over decades of service. And the board was brainstorming ideas on how to memorialize Joe. And if anyone knew Joe, like our board did, he hated naming things after people. He thought it was a problem. What if the person does something silly and you have something named after them? What do we do? So we wanted to try to honor his wishes, but at the same time, do what we thought was right because of the impact and the legacy that he left behind and that he leaves behind. So we had a brainstorming session separately. Mike sent out an email, or Amanda sent out an email, asked the board members some ideas. And one that really resonated with me, and I think a few of the other board members, was we have a meeting room at Town Hall, the select board's meeting room. And what a cool opportunity to name that permanent fixture, the Joseph F. Botash II conference room. So that's kind of how we got here. I'm opening it up to the board quickly to see if anyone has any thoughts on that. And I think Mike wants us to take a formal vote. So I will be asking for a vote. But for now, I want to just open it up and see if Selectwoman Rouse has any thoughts on that.
No further thoughts. I think it is absolutely appropriate and a wonderful memorial to Joe and his service to this town.
Thank you. Selectman Anderson.
Thank you. I concur with Selectman Rouse. I think this is very appropriate. And I think with everything Joe's done for the town, I think it'd be a nice thing for him and his family.
You know, I do want to say too that we did reach out to Kathy Botash and asked her thoughts on some of the ideas, and she seemed to be very appreciative and keen to this one. So we do have her blessing. I'm okay to say that. Selectman Harrington.
Everything has been said. I couldn't think of any better way to honor him, and I'm proud that we're doing it.
Great, thank you. And I obviously feel the same way. So at this time, Mike, do we need to take a formal vote for the record?
I would recommend it.
Okay, Vice Chair would entertain a motion to move forward with the dedication of the Select Board meeting room to Joseph F. Botash II.
So moved.
So moved by everybody. So I'll give that one to Harrington. Motion made by Harrington, second by Selectman Anderson. Any further discussion? Being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse.
Rouse, yes.
Selectman Anderson.
Anderson, yes.
Selectman Harrington.
Harrington, yes.
Chris Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. 6:43. Do we have anything? Doesn't look like we have anything quick. Mike, do we?
I could very quickly do the town manager's report,
You think?
but that would be if there was no follow-up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you need more time.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we can't start earlier than the posted time.
we cannot.
Yeah, for a hearing.
So we apologize for this quick pause. And maybe I'm a little too efficient sometimes in the meeting.
We need a little background music.
Appropriate. And we could do public comment now, but that wouldn't give people enough time either, especially if you know.
Can we do a quick IT course on getting me up and running here?
Selectman Anderson, I don't know if there's enough IT professionals in the town, but we could surely try.
Hey, Jim, is there a home button on your iPad, or is it an iPad without a home button? I can't remember.
What's a home button?
Is
Oh,
there
boy.
a button that you press to
Yeah.
get to the home screen?
Yes.
Press that button.
Okay.
And now does it show all your app icons?
It does.
Do you see a Zoom icon?
Is that the spinning wheel? Oh, I see the Zoom. Oh, yeah. Okay.
What happens when you click that?
So nothing.
Nothing.
Hmm.
I feel like
so-
something should happen.
So I'm on the Zoom because
Mhm.
I'm talking to you guys.
Yep.
I can't find it anywhere. Like it's not even popping up on a screen someplace.
If you double click the home button, do you see do a whole bunch of windows kind of pop up and you can see things you have open?
Okay. Hold on here. So
It is 6:45. If you guys are
yeah, we'll go with this tonight.
sorry about that, Jim.
It's okay.
We'll get it. Hey, listen, we'll get it figured out.
Yeah.
And for those people watching, don't you dare tell me our meetings aren't fun and comment and provide some level of comic relief.
Yeah.
So here we go. 6:45, public hearing time. So I'm gonna ask for, we're doing a public hearing right now on fee updates. And I'm gonna, we have the town clerk with us, Department of Public Works with us, and Department of Inspections. I am going to ask for a motion to open the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, motion made by Selectman Anderson, second by Selectman Harrington. And I do apologize in advance if I screw this up. I never seem to get this process right. But we're going on a good track right now. I'm going to also do a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
we got a motion made by Selectman Harrington, a second by Selectman Anderson. And then I think we're in. Are we open, Mike? We're open.
Yes.
Okay, welcome to the public hearing, everyone, on our fees. At this time, who's going to start the presentation, Mr. King?
We can start with the town clerk.
Cynthia Thompson, our town clerk. I think you're on mute.
I am on mute. Yes. Hi, board members. How are you tonight?
Good, and you?
Good, thank you. So the town clerk fee schedule hasn't been updated since 2012, which is way before I became town clerk. And there are just a few things that I need to revise on it, as they're time consuming, and they do fall in line with other towns' prices and cost. So the first thing is an amendment of a birth or death is currently $15. We just want to increase it to $20. A lot of funeral homes can make errors on death certificates, and it is time consuming for our office to have to go through and get all the evidence to provide to this Department of Public Health to modify the death records. Same with birth records. Now that you don't have to declare your sex, or you can change your name at any time on your birth record, it does take time. A home birth is going from $25 to $50. That's a lot of work on our office's part to get statements from the midwife, find proof of residence, make sure that the parents are who they say they are. Filing an out of Commonwealth marriage, that's when you get married in Aruba if you'd like to choose to do that. It's difficult for us to create a marriage license if you don't have anything local to put on the marriage certificate. And then in line with what we did a few years ago with dog license fees, I approached town meeting, I think it was in 2023, to reduce the second fine of $100 per dog for each resident for being late with their dog license. So that is just to update our fee schedule to match what we did in the bylaws. And then the only other thing we did was take off the sale of general bylaws and zoning bylaws, subdivision rules and regulations. We haven't done that in quite some time, and now everything's on town code. We no longer have personnel bylaws, so there's no reason to sell them. And then zoning maps and aquifer protection and watershed maps, we don't sell those anymore either. So it's just a few things to update our office for costs, which really is not too much.
Okay. So what I want to do is just open it up for any board questions for Mrs. Thompson, before we move on. And Mike, we're going to vote all these in at the end, right?
Yes, unless there is one that you would like to abstain on voting.
Okay. We'll start with Selectwoman Rouse. Any questions or concerns?
No questions regarding that, those
Okay.
changes.
Selectman Anderson? Sorry, Selectman Anderson?
Yeah, no questions. I think Cindy explained it, very well, and it looks good to me.
Okay, thank you, sir. Selectman Harrington?
No questions, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I have no questions, Cindy. Great job. It makes sense. Should we move on then? Let's move on to the next round of fees. Who's that, Mike?
Next will
That's,
be Public Works.
Public Works. We have Brian Antonoli, Director of Public Works. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. So we did a study with, I believe, 8 different similar to size communities with the similar services to determine where we were at with our rates. So we were a little bit under in some places, and we were on the money in other places. So we decided end of the day to raise the turn on turn off water fee by $20 to $65. The brush dump, we decided to leave at 20 for residents. The commercial, we decided to raise to 1,500. Mainly on that one due to cost. We've got some commercial entities definitely taking advantage of it, bringing in a ton of brush waste, and the prices to tub grind it and get rid of it has not gone down over the years. So we felt that was reasonable to raise that. And then in terms of the cemetery costs, I think Ray Rose could give you a better explanation than I on that.
Ray, are you available to speak to us, sir?
I thought I saw him earlier.
Yeah, he's on.
He's
I
on.
see our Rose. He might be.
I mean, I can explain. I can explain it.
Yeah, go ahead. And if he wants to jump in before you're at, we can let him do that, Brian.
Sure. I mean, essentially, it's the same thing. 8 different communities. Cemetery services similar to ours. What the cost is, and we found that we were way under in certain areas. We brought it up to be in line with other communities. Same with anything else in life. Costs are not going down for anything that we have to pay for. So these numbers made sense to us, taking into account. We don't want to raise too much, but we went with what we felt was reasonable compared to where other towns were that are similar sized. I think that's really the best way I can explain it.
That's fine. I appreciate that. I'm going to start with Selectwoman Rouse again, see if she has any questions.
Yeah, no further questions. Great clarification from Brian regarding the cost increases.
Selectman Anderson?
Yep, that looks good to me. Thank you.
Okay. Selectman Harrington?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
And my only comment is, just like with everything, I always ask us, are we competitive with other, towns, similar size? I don't want to gouge anyone on fees. Everyone's feeling the pressure. Everything, like you just said, everything's going up in our lives, right? So we want to be competitive, but we also have to make sure that we're not so low that we're losing money and revenue for the taxpayers, right? So it's the balance. So I think everything looks great, Brian. I personally don't have any other questions. Appreciate your time. Appreciate all your hard work, everything you do for us and your team. And thank you for being on tonight. And I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you.
You're welcome to Commissioner Knapp, John Knapp, to go over building fees.
Good evening. Thank
Welcome,
you,
Commissioner Knapp.
Vice
Thanks for
Chair
being here
Gallo,
tonight.
and the rest of the board. Thanks for having me on tonight. We went through the Collins Center that reviewed what we were doing, what other towns around us were doing. In the past, we would do like Brian, you sit down and literally look eye for eye for fees across. With the changes that we made this time, we streamlined a lot of it and eliminated a lot of small different permits and brought them under one full assembly, like under residential. Used to be 50 or 75 or 100. Now it's just $13 per thousand at the recommendation from the Collins Center. So we stayed with that. Signs, like a $15 increase on that. Small increase on the temporary tents. And then everything else stayed the same. When we go to wiring permits, everything pretty much stayed the same. We went up $50 on pools and hot tubs, $50 on solars, and brought the commercial oddball stuff like fire alarms and low voltage permits, and brought those up to a $250. So that was $100 increase on those. The other thing that we added was after hours, following from like Foxborough and Plainville, when my staff is called out for an emergency, we added a $200 fee onto that to be able to cover cost of sending the inspectors out for those emergency calls. Reinspection fees went up $30 on if they fail an inspection, we go out. And then on the plumbing, gas, and on residential and commercial, we streamlined a lot of it. My plumbing inspector sat down and went through a lot of the other fees that we were charging. And again, we just streamlined how it was coming through so that it basically all falls under one fee for ease of permitting on that side. On our commercials, nothing changed. Same thing on the reinspection fees on all of them will all get increased. The annual inspection for the liquor license, we increased those by $20 for up to 100. Over 200, it got increased to 70. And then over 350, we kept it at the same for an increase of 70 on that. And that was kind of going up to what other towns around us. We were only charging $80 for the inspection. And then the same thing on the annual inspections for 3-family and more, we went up 20 on those. So it wasn't a huge increase, but we definitely went through and just tweaked them with the recommendations from the with the Collins Center from all the work that they did on it. We do still have to do weights and measures. We haven't been collecting a fee, and even the state says, yeah, most towns don't, but we should be, because we do pay money out. It was to the state that used to do our sealing of the gas pumps and the scales at like the grocery markets or any of the hand scanners at the outlets. Somebody actually has to go out and check those to make sure that they're working correctly. So we're working on fees on that one right now. I'll come back with a separate one when the Norfolk County scale division gets back to us to kind of give us direction on fees. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you for that detailed explanation, John Naff. Let me start with Selectwoman Rouse to see if she has any questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. John, I just have a quick question because I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah.
So like the dishwasher replacement, all of those that are crossed out, they're now that you're consolidating. So everything is that one set price of $140?
No, so on a replacement of a device for that will be, 1 second, let me just look at it. Up to 6. I want to say a dishwasher was the same as a hot water heater, but it's not saying it on this. But I can get that information back to you, because you know, charging them $140 for a $500 dishwasher,
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be angry.
Yeah, I thought that when I went through this between the dishwasher,
Yeah.
garbage disposal, I was trying to understand it. So I wanted to make sure that I was on the right page. So, because that did not make sense in terms of that
No.
increase. So if we can check that, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great catch. Selectman Anderson.
Yeah, no further questions. Good job, John, with the presentation.
Thank you. Yep.
Selectman Harrington.
Just to confirm what you had indicated earlier, Vice Chair, you know, that we're in line with other communities in the area. It seems to me that they're simplified, but I just want to be, you know, that we're not price gouging and that we're in line with, you know, our neighboring communities of like size.
I'll let Commissioner Knapp
No,
answer.
correct. I don't have the Collins report in front of me, but the Collins report went in. They were looking at Foxborough. They looked at Plainville. They also went more west and even looked at more out there also. And they came back and they just said, you're not in line with what you're charging. to what other towns are charging. So we're like, okay, we'll definitely make the change to it.
So by deleting items and combining them and then adding some
Correct.
increases and dropping a bunch, we're
Correct.
we're on board.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Great work.
You know, and just an observation for me, and I do not proclaim to be an expert here. It seems like there's a level of streamlining as well. So we're not looking
Correct.
at 3,000 fees, right?
Correct.
There's one fee for this huge bucket, and then John
Correct.
can say, okay, boom, that's the fee. Instead
Yeah.
of, you know, it just seems like the old way. It was very granular, I think is the word.
Yeah, on our old permits for commercial, you know, there was a dozen different devices for each thing. And we basically just came back and said, okay, hold on a minute. It's going to be $200 plus 2% of the cost. The same thing that we do on the electrical side, instead of 60 for this, 60 for that. And it's also going to bring in additional revenues for us also.
That's great. Any further questions from the board members before we go to a vote? I know we're up against a public hearing at 7 that I'm late for. So seeing no further questions, the vice chair would entertain a motion to approve the town clerk, Department of Public Works, Department of Inspections fee schedules as presented effective July 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Selectman Anderson, second by Selectman Harrington. Any further discussion? Being none, roll call vote.
Hey, John, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chair.
Discussion?
John will be sending us the updated information just to
Yes,
clarify.
before that.
Okay,
Absolutely. Yep.
thank you.
Awesome. And if there's a problem, we can always address it as needed. So let me, motion was made by Selectman Anderson, second by Selectman Harrington.
But Vice Chair,
Versa.
so did we close the public hearing? And before we do that, we should take public input.
Well, geez, see, I told you I didn't like these.
He was on
Okay.
a roll.
Yeah, I was just trying. I'm nervous because we're at 7:02. We're late for the next one. But you're right. We got to do things right. Okay, so before we close the public hearing, I would now like to ask if there's any public input. And what are the rules for public input, Mike King? Someone has to unmute, raise your hand on mute, and state your name and address.
Yes, and we try to limit people to 2 minutes.
Okay, and be as nice as possible. Is there any public input at this time?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, is that
Like
Ray
Miguel?
Rose?
It is. It
Hey,
is.
Ray.
I got some assistance from upstairs. I was here prepared and ready to speak with you guys right along, but I could not get it to unmute. I could not get the video to work, so I had help doing that. I just wanted to thank you for and thank Brian for, talking to you about these fees and say I support this increase. And I just want to apologize that I'm basically like Jim Anderson. I'm not a techno guru, so I struggle when it comes to these technology aspects of it. But I did get help from upstairs, and I'm here if you have any more questions for me.
Ray, I'm constantly praying for help from upstairs. So I think we're on the same page.
I really
And
appreciate
two of my
it.
favorite guys in town, and Ray
Thank
Rose.
you
So
so much.
no problem, my friend. Okay.
So much.
Okay. Anyone else would like to give public input at this time before we close the public hearing? Seeing none. At this time, Vice Chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Motion made by Selectman Harrington, second by Selectwoman Rouse. Do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse,
Rouse, yes.
Selectman Anderson,
Yes.
Selectman Harrington,
Harrington, yes.
Chris Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. Now, Mike King, the Vice Chair would entertain a motion to approve the town clerk, Department of Public Works, Department of Inspections fee schedules as presented effective July 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Motion made by Selectwoman Rouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Anderson. Any further discussion? Being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse,
Rouse, yes.
Selectman Anderson,
Yes.
Selectman Harrington,
Harrington, yes.
Chris Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. Great job, everyone. Okay. It looks like we now have to go to the next public hearing, correct? Which is a public hearing regarding our right of first refusal on 2095 West Street. So, at this time, Vice Chair will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second it. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Motion made by Selectman Anderson, second by Selectwoman Rouse. Any further discussion? Being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse,
Rouse, yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Harrington,
Harrington, yes.
Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. At this time, Vice Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Selectman Harrington, second by Selectman Anderson. Any further discussion? Being none, do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse,
Rouse, yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Harrington,
Harrington, yes.
Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. We are in a public hearing. This time, Mike, who's going to take the lead with the presentation?
I'd like to start by providing, I know we've been talking about this in successive meetings, but I'd like to provide an update of CPC's vote at their March 11th meeting, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed if possible.
Please.
So at its March 11th meeting, CPC voted to support the 2095 West Street land acquisition with a borrowing of up to $1.9 million over 10 years. Additionally, the committee recommended that the select board utilize the $600,000 in the land acquisition fund towards the purchase as well, in order to cover the full purchase price of $2.5 million. Next steps are for the select board to vote on whether to exercise the town's right of first refusal for 2095 West Street. And if the select board decides to exercise that right, to call a special town meeting to authorize a Community Preservation Act borrowing.
Okay. Anything else?
That's the update I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the select board has prior
Mike,
to public input. Yeah.
yes, Mike, I have a question, and then I'll open it up to the board. Just quickly walk us through the financial impacts or ramifications, because there's a lot of confusion or question regarding. Obviously, I think the you know, and this isn't obvious for everyone, but this is not going to be an override where the taxpayers would have to pay more money in their property taxes, correct?
That is correct.
And then can you walk through what the financial ramifications are? What happens if you know, one of the other farms, Big Apple Farm, another piece of property comes up that we have an interest in purchasing if we exercise our rights on this purchase? Just talk through that if you don't mind.
Sure. So just to put it in perspective, $2.5 million purchase price. If the select board were to exercise and use the $600,000 from the land acquisition fund, a 10-year borrowing would be about $225,000 a year from the CPC fund. What does that mean? Let's put that in perspective. That's equivalent to approximately the entire budgeted reserve of the CPC fund account. So this would mean that approximately 2/3 of the CPA budget would be dedicated to debt service payments. So first of all, the question is, can the Community Preservation Fund budget afford this project? It can. What does it mean long term? There will be limited availability of funds if another right of first refusal came up in the future to exercise, right, to provide that funding source. You know, the town's been putting aside $200,000 annually into the land acquisition fund. If this project were to move forward as a debt issuance, it is highly unlikely that the CPC would be able to fund additional $200,000 payment deposits into a land acquisition fund. So without a land acquisition fund, in limited amounts of budgetary availability, if another property did become available, the CPC would not have the resources to finance that purchase. And could the town still finance purchase? Yes, but you'd be looking at a debt exclusion, which would be increasing the taxes to the voters, which is different than the CPC.
Okay, thank you for that summary. And I do want to mention as well that we have support letters in our packets. We have support letters from open space. We have support letters from conservation. We did not get a letter from planning, did we?
We have not.
Okay. And we have the CPC itself is in favor of this, correct?
Yes, they voted in favor to support.
Okay. So with all this being said, I'd like to open it up to our board first, and then get public comment or, anyone who'd like to speak. I see there's members here from those committees. So first, I'd like to open up to the board, and we'll start with, we're going to start with Selectman Harrington, because he actually has, he sits on the committee. I think he'd provide an interesting perspective to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I did have Amanda send you earlier today the packet that we had presented to us. There's a couple of things for clarification. We bring forward to the town meeting each year for the last 3 years that they put aside $200,000 a year for a potential purchase of a piece of property. So the difference, if we were to continue the $200,000 a year each year request, and by this over the 10 years, it would be 225 instead of just the 200. It is clearly going to limit the land acquisition fund. So if another piece of property did become available, the CPC would not have the funds in the land acquisition account. We still would have other funds for the other buckets, housing, recreation. So that, just for clarification on that, we did look at all of the financing for it. The best thing to do would be to do it on a 10-year rate. It would save $540,000, $540,687 over the 10 years, which is a substantial amount of money. I'm looking, Amanda, was there a letter from Recreation on this? I don't see it in my packet now, and I thought we had received.
Yeah, there should have been an email from Jeff Plimpton included.
There was.
Right. Oh, okay. I didn't see it in my packet. So, so the Recreation's take on it. Obviously, he likes the open space. He's looking for developable land in West Wrentham for fields, which was part of the master plan. He's not opposed to buying this, but he's not in favor of it. The land is really not conducive for his needs in recreation. As the CPC board, we looked at it carefully. It falls into the criteria for CPC, land acquisition funds and open space. And that's what we had voted on, that the project is clearly eligible. It's eligible to move forward if the town decides to, and we chose the funding source, which obviously would save the most in the end. If you have any questions, I can try and help. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
And Selectman Harrington, just to clarify, we're not voting, and Mike King, we're not voting on the funding source or anything like that. We're voting just to exercise our right of first refusal to bring this to town meeting, to call a special town meeting, to let the voters decide if they want to purchase this. Is that fair?
So if I can, Mike, three things we're doing. One is we're voting to authorize the use of the $600,000 that we've put away. One of the things that we stipulated when we started that fund, it's in control of the final say to authorize the use of it is to the select board. So we'd have to vote, yes, we're going to spend the $600,000 towards it. I believe as part of the project is once we decide if we were to move it to town meeting, we need to know how we would pay for it. So that's how we chose the funding. And then from there, if the board so elects to move the funds from the 600 grand in the funding, then we would need the special town meeting for the townspeople to say, yeah, we want to buy it, or no, we don't. Is that clear? Is that right, Mike?
I would, yes, those votes do need to be taken. I would say for tonight, the vote would be whether or not to exercise the right of first refusal. And then I would say at the next select board meeting, we would have two votes. We would have one to because we don't have it on the warrant right now, which is to authorize the use of the $600,000 towards the purchase, and then a separate vote to call the town meeting. So to open and close the warrant. So yes, those votes would need to be taken, but tonight it would be to exercise the right.
All right, so so that would be bringing the vote until April, and we need to have a town meeting pretty quickly, if in fact that's the will of the board, correct?
That is correct. We'd be looking at early May.
Early May, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have nothing else unless somebody has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Selectwoman Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I do have a question, Bill, and perhaps you can just clarify again. So this fund is for land and recreation. So if we move forward with this, are we saying that for 10 plus years, there will be funds for possible recreation projects, or there will not, because it all is dedicated to this purchase?
So this specific bucket out of the CPC is going to be used for the open space that would not affect the recreation portion. We'd still have funds for that. We do have debt in that bucket, but we would still have funds available for recreation. Their hands would not be tied by this. The only fund that would be really wrapped up would be the open space to purchase anything additional if it came up.
Okay, I thought they were tied together, and that wasn't split up.
Can I provide clarification if I may?
Sure.
So I just want to clarify. So we're kind of talking about two different funds here. We get the land acquisition fund, right, which is the 600,000. But then we have what would be known as the reserve for open space and recreation, and they fall under the same asset category. The town will continue to fund at a minimum 10% of their budget towards that asset category as required by the CPC statute. That equates to around $40,000 annually. So there will be funds available, but they will be limited.
Okay. Okay. And I know that we received a letter from Recreation, Bill. Just to be clear, is the CPC rep was on board with moving forward with this?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Was the CPC rec representative, or so the rec representative on CPC, were they on board with moving forward with this purchase, just out of curiosity?
I apologize, but I don't recall.
Okay.
If the rep, everybody was on board with the fact that it's an eligible program. I don't know if he specifically was on board with everybody moved it forward that sits on the board because it is clearly eligible.
Okay.
I think at the, once, if it gets moved at that point, then he would make it, everybody could make their own personal decisions, whether they think it should be purchased or put aside.
Okay, great. I really appreciated the open space, the conservation, the CPC information. It felt like a lot of our words in terms of when we're talking about the MBTA in preserving our town and controlling what we want to do for the town. So I completely understand and walk that street quite frequently, putting my life at risk. It is a beautiful spot of land, but it does come with, the fiscal challenges. And, but I respect the recommendation of those that are on the CPC regarding their decision on this. And I think that they provided some good information as we were witnessing in the last few weeks with different presentations and letters sent to us. So no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Has anyone, so let me just ask this question, Mike, with regarding the financial impacts. The entity that had this parcel under agreement, It was a builder, correct? A developer.
Yes.
Do we have any idea what that developer was planning on putting there? I'm just trying to give the voters and taxpayers an idea of, I'm not saying I support, I don't support, we're gonna vote in a minute, but I want to give the voters a full picture of tax revenue that we're not exercising if we were to see this parcel developed into whatever they were planning on. Were they gonna put 750 units there? Were they gonna put $1 million homes? Do we have any idea what they were? Bill's raising his hand.
Yep. If I may, Mr. Vice Chair, I did have a conversation with the builder. So the parcel is 65 acres. The builder owns an additional 17 acres adjacent to it. So those two pieces would be combined. He's looking at putting in roughly 12 to 15 very expensive homes, obviously. There's no streets. They're going to be shared driveways. And he is willing to put a presentation at town meeting with what his plans are for it. So a good chunk of what he is adding to the 65 acres, and a big chunk of it is not going to be developed at all because it's hilly, wet. So it's going to be added in to open space as he has in other development that he's done in town.
So just doing some quick math, 65 acres divided by 15 homes, that's 4.3 acres per home. Currently West Wrentham has a 2-acre minimum zone, so it's double that. I just want to get the full picture out there. It seems like this isn't dense housing. This is, to what you said, higher end. I'm assuming, over $1 million home and 12 and 15 of them.
Right, because the other parcel that goes with it, it's adjacent to it, the 17 acres is going to be added into the 65 acres to make it developable. Because from what I mean, if you look at the topographical maps and the information that was provided by Open Space, there's a good chunk of it that's not developable. There's it's wet, it's hilly.
Is that 17 acres, Bill? That's developable? Like they could develop on that?
They can come, from what he was telling me, that he can combine that in with the 65 to be able to get the shared driveways and that amount of homes. And again, he'd like the opportunity to come to town meeting and, do a presentation so that everybody can understand where, what the plan is for it.
So it's more like 82 acres with the two parcels combined, divided by 15 homes, 5.46 acres per lot. I know that's rough. That's not accurate. It's rough. I'm just trying to give people an idea of the density we're talking about here.
Right.
Okay. Who's next?
I have one more question. I know that in some of the documentation, they talked about this being one of the highest ranking properties, but is it the highest ranking, and how many are above this? Like, can you give a little bit more clarification on that, Bill? I don't know if you would be able to do that, or Alan can give that input in terms of, it was pretty generic that it's one of the highest, but it didn't clarify.
I think that would be a great question. Thank you for that question. I think it'd be a great question for Open Space, and I believe Alan Selling could answer that if he's on.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw him.
Yeah.
Alan, welcome to the meeting. Would you mind answering that question for us if you can, sir?
So it's up there. There are some properties that scored higher, slightly higher. The other properties that scored higher were larger, the Big Apple, because there's a sliding scale for the size. This one scored well because it's on a major thoroughfare, West Street, and it has a lot of frontage on that. And in addition, it's large, and it actually has some water resources on it. So that's why it scored quite highly. it's a 7-point scale, actually, has 7 criteria on it. I provided that to Michelle, and I think she provided that to the rest of you select board members with the explanation.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair?
Sure.
The scale that you can, what is this? Where did the scale come up? Where did it come from? Who developed it?
Our conservation agent, Daryl Luce, developed the scale on using 6 criteria. Maybe he can give you a little overview of the 7 criteria, if you would.
Through the Vice Chair.
Yeah, why not? Daryl, welcome to our meeting. How are you?
Oh, fine, and I hope everyone else as well. Yeah, the scoring criteria, they are meant to basically be a first measure and aren't definitive. I mean, you can't say that, oh, this one scored higher than that one, because we're looking at just basically water resources and connectivity with other parcels. Connectivity usually goes with protection of wildlife habitat and things like that. But largely, when you look at our scoring system, it's really driven on drinking water resources, making sure that that we have plenty of areas that are able to filter what ends up in our wells. Out in that area, it's all private wells, but still, it's important for those people that do have those wells. It protects the water quality and quantity. We looked at primarily the shape of the parcels too, making sure we got something that was, not too constricted in some areas. The idea being just, again, focus on large parcels that are in some of our aquifer areas. This happens to be partially in the Charles River watershed and the Blackstone mostly.
Appreciate that. Does that answer your question, Selectwoman Rouse?
It does, thank you.
I guess my only concern would be, and maybe this is a question to Alan.
Yeah.
Is you mentioned Big Apple.
Yeah.
If we exercise our right of first refusal on this property, and a parcel like Big Apple, who I think you said might even be higher ranked than this one, comes available, are we okay with are we okay with that? Meaning we would not be able to exercise our right and do anything there.
I don't think, this is my personal opinion, this is 65 acres. The Big Apple is 186 acres. You're talking about a $7 to $9 million parcel. We're not in that game.
So you're saying we wouldn't have the financing capabilities of exercising that first right of first refusal anyway, even if we wanted to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do the math. I mean,
that's why I have you here.
I mean, the way we've looked at this is to get this parcel, it would require commitment of another, 10 years of basically the same amount of money we've been putting aside every year. Whereas something like the Big Apple, it's 3.5 times the size of this thing. We're not a big enough town to do that. We don't have that kind of cash.
And Mike, let me ask you this. If we were interested in buying the Big Apple, right, and we couldn't afford to buy it with CPC funds, if the townspeople really wanted to, couldn't they vote a debt exclusion?
Yes.
To buy it via debt exclusion?
Yes, they absolutely could. They could the town could put it on a town meeting warrant, and they could decide at whether or not it made sense to do a debt borrowing, which would then have to be a debt exclusion because we don't have the capacity within the budget to cover that.
And not that I'm recommending that. I just want to know that that's an option for the townspeople if they chose. Okay, Daryl, do you have anything to add? I know you unmuted yourself again.
Oh, thank you for the thing is with the Big Apple, and well, with this parcel too, there's alternative other measures of funding that we can use. Like the Big Apple, if that were to come up, we don't need to buy it to run an orchard. Basically, we could buy the development rights, and somebody could come in and purchase the property as an orchard, not as developable material. And in a like sense here, Dave Paulson, another member of the Open Space Committee, has been working with the Pawtucket Water Supply Board. He said they were favorable when he talked to him last Tuesday, I believe, or last Monday, but you know, there was no commitment of any sort of money at that time. Pawtucket Water Supply Board does own quite a bit of land in the area where we're looking at down at Burnt Swamp for a new well site. So they protected part of our future watershed, hopefully, in that regard. And there's certainly other techniques rather than just flat out fee purchase.
If the owner of Big Apple would be amenable to that, but if they were trying to get top dollar, letting us sell the licensing, I mean, we're talking $9 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope that they would let us do that, but sometimes money talks, Daryl, you know?
Absolutely.
No, but that's a great point. I'm gonna ask, I don't think Selectman Anderson has had a chance to weigh in on any of this. So I'll ask Selectman Anderson to weigh in, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So on the surface, you know, I like the idea of having open space for the town of Wrentham. But in this particular case, you know, I do question, you know, whether or not the purchase at this time is worth it. And I base that off of the fact that, you know, we're still paying for the Tri-County School portion of that new building that they're putting in over in Franklin. You know, we just purchased land for a well, and we're going to be putting in what, a $3 or $4 million well down the west end. You know, we're looking at the DPW building project, and we know that the school is in the process of potentially building a brand new school. So I just question whether or not that $200,000 annual appropriation that goes to CDC every year, if that will continue, because I think we're going to be stretched budget-wise with all these projects.
Jim,
Can I field that?
Yeah, hold on one sec though, because
Yes,
I want to make sure that I'm understanding the question correctly. I think what you're saying is related to our, you know, the fact that we have debt exclusion projects on the horizon that we're going to have to you know, go to the townspeople and talk about debt exclusion and potentially, you know, pay via raising taxes or a one-time exclusion. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is something different because the taxpayers aren't paying this via debt exclusion. They're paying it via the CPC contribution. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
That it's, if I can.
Please.
So the CPC is funded for two ways. One, it's a percentage of the taxes on your home after the first $100,000. It goes directly to the CPC, and then the state has matching funds so that the debt exclusion money that we're going to need for the schools and the DPW building are not affected by CPC. So this land purchase, that funding, we're going to collect the money from the townspeople off their tax base anyway. And as long as we get state matching funds, which has been pretty good over the last few years, we're still going to have money go into each bucket. So it's not that debt exclusion money, it's totally separate funding.
And we can't use the CPC money towards a DPW building or a school.
Correct. That being said, if they do the new school down at the end of Roderick, you're going to be losing a lot of ball fields.
Yeah.
And we're going to need funding for baseball fields because it's, you know, it's clearly a huge sport in town. All those outdoor activities are, and that's funding that could be utilized through CPC.
Jim, does that help answer your or does that help you with the the last statement, or?
Yeah. So maybe this question is for Mike King. So my concern is this: with all these building projects, and if our budget is stretched to the limit, is there still going to be money available the $200,000 to CPC annually? Or will that have to be cut back?
Yeah, in terms of CPC, there's no doubt that they're going to have less financial flexibility than they have in the past to fund projects. But with that said, the CPC did vote that they are comfortable with that as the stewards of those funds.
Right, we voted that we're comfortable that it's an eligible project and it should be brought forward to the townspeople to make the decision because it's clearly eligible under the guidelines of CPC. And there's enough other boards, open space, conservation that are interested in it, that, you know, that should be at this point left up to the townspeople.
And Mike,
That's the way we presented it.
and can you just speak, Mike, to Jim's concern that I just want him to be, I want to make sure we're all 100% clear on the same page relating to his concern with all these other projects and the ability of if we decide to do this, right, with the CPC funds, how does that affect our ability to perform on those other projects that Jim referred to?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the CPA funds are separately segregated.
Yes.
So though I think it was just touched upon earlier, those can't be used towards the school, right? They can't be used towards the DPW building. Taxes are not raised because you're taking on more debt. But the CPC, you're using a finite number of funds. And as Selectman Harrington touched upon, they're funded by a surcharge. So it's 1% of your tax bill after $100,000 residential exemption. There's no exemption for commercial. They get charged the full 1%. And then there's a state match, which is funded via Registry of Deeds fees. So that's what funds the CPC. They have an estimated conservative budget based on what they believe they're going to be bringing in from the surcharge and those state match. And that's what they have to work with. So if they bring on more debt, it's just less money in the pot to spend on other projects. It doesn't affect some of these other debt exclusions that are down the line.
Jim, does that make sense?
It does. It clarifies it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Selectwoman Rouse?
So further clarification, Mike, so money that's been spent, I know last year there was a significant amount of money spent on the lakes. There would be less money to do projects like that, correct?
In theory, yes.
But the CPC unanimously supported this project or supported bringing it to town meeting to let the voters decide if we should fund this project.
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Okay. So Mike, has the board, before I open up to the public, has the board had a chance to ask all the questions that they wanted to ask? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to open up to the public and I'm going to ask that you direct any comments through me to whoever the question is to. Same rules apply. Please unmute yourself, raise your hand. I'll call on you, state your name and your address, and then feel free to give your comment and please keep it to 2 minutes. Would anyone from the public, Mike, is this okay if I do this now?
Yes, as long as the board doesn't have any further questions.
Just want to make sure I'm not breaking any rules.
Any more rules?
But we fixed them, Bill, so it's okay. So at this time, I'd like to ask the public to please feel free to raise your hand. When I see a hand go up, I'll ask you to unmute yourself and please give a comment. I'm looking. Don't be shy. I'll give you a minute. Okay. Doesn't look like we're getting any comments here. If anyone sees any. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Lisa Bailey, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, thank you. How you doing?
Welcome to our meeting. Is that Howard Bailey I see in the background?
Yeah, the one and only.
Hey, Howard. Welcome to the meeting. Please state your name and your address, and please limit your comment to 2 minutes, please.
You bet. So my name is Lisa Bailey. I live at 57 Cherry Street in Wrentham. I'm related to Howard Bailey. I also sit on the CPC and on the Wrentham Historical Commission. And so while I sat on the CPC, I, of course, because of my last name, recused myself from the vote for this particular situation because the developer is related to me. But I would like to clarify 2 things. The first, when something is brought to the CPC, we don't vote for or against it. We don't say whether we're in favor for it or we're not. We instead have a list of criteria to determine if this project is eligible to ask the town for the funds. So for example, I sit on the historical commission, and one of the things that we'd like to do is try to save the old Fisk library. And so we asked for funds for a study through the CPC this past year. And we had to prove that it would preserve, the funds would go to preserve history. You know, there had to be a series of things. And so when open space requests funds to purchase a property, we don't say, yes, you can purchase it, or we're all in favor of it. We instead say, yes, it does meet the criteria to move to the next, So in saying that the CPC was in favor of it wasn't necessarily true. Certainly there are some people who are enthusiastically in favor of it, and some of us that would like to get more information. The second thing I'd like to say is I love the fact that you asked if anybody knows what the developer wants to do with this property, because so far that hasn't been asked. And what I have to say is, luckily, great news. The developer's, my father-in-law, his goals very closely align with the goals of the Open Space Committee, where he too wants to preserve the historical significance of that street. He wants to preserve the natural habitat, the animals, all of that. So with 80+ acres, you're correct. That means, you know, if you divided it by the 14, 15 houses, then it's 5+ acres per lot. But each lot is not going to be that. Instead, they're going to be smaller, still meeting the 2-acre lot minimum, but there'll be all of this beautiful space around it. Each of those houses is going to be over $1 million, probably over $1.5 million, which will in turn bring great tax revenue to our town, not only from the property taxes, but each of those people. I don't know many people who have a $2 million house who drive a Hyundai, so they're probably driving expensive cars. That would also add excise taxes. Those kids are probably not using our schools. Hopefully they are, but a lot of kids that live in a $2 million property are going to the private schools around us. So there was a subject brought up about the number of kids that might live in that neighborhood and its impact on the schools. That would be minimal.
Lisa, I thank you so much for that. Amanda, point of clarification. Are we timing these? Not that she went too long. I just want to make sure that we're being fair to everyone.
We were timing it. We did go over a little bit there by about like 45 seconds or so.
Can you give me like I need to figure out a way to let me know so I can politely ask the people if they go longer than 2 minutes. Hey, I just want to say I really appreciate that perspective, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I am going to move on. There was another gentleman, resident Leo Immonen, who
Thank you
raised
for
his hand.
letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Always. No, it's listen, this is not our meeting. It's the townspeople's meeting. We just facilitate it. So appreciate it. Have a great night. At this time, we're going to give Mr. Immonen an opportunity to speak also. Can we get the timer? And we do have to give Mr. Immonen a little more than 2 minutes if he wants them, because we did on the last one. Mr. Immonen, welcome to our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo. As chair of the Conservation Commission, I'd like to report that the members of the Conservation Commission enthusiastically support this project. One thing that the Community Preservation Act was passed was for the purchase of open space. We haven't purchased any open space in the town for almost 20 years now. Prior to that time, we were purchasing open space roughly every 10 years. Purchasing open space is very important to the community in all studies we have done. We have found that people like, in fact, love the rural character of Wrentham. And one way of maintaining that rural character is keeping land undeveloped. Now, as we've heard earlier, having land undeveloped has its value and it's important. So that we again support it wholeheartedly. We realize development is needed in certain areas, but when we have an opportunity to go ahead and buy open space, we strongly recommend it. Thank you, Mr. Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Eminent, and you came in well with under the 2 minutes, so we appreciate that.
I try to respect the rules, Mr. Gallo.
Thank you for doing that, Mr. Eminent. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak, or do we have any board members? Actually, no, I can't. We already gave the board members an opportunity. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this? Okay. So Mike, at this time, looks like, is that Howard Bailey?
This is Howard Bailey.
Mr. Bailey, welcome to the meeting. State your name and address, please, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay, got it. Howard Bailey, live on Spring Street in Wrentham. And I would like to just, we talk about the town not having purchased any land. In this particular area out here, I know for a fact, because they were all projects that I was involved in, that I think all of the land that the town has received in the west end of town is from developers under the OSPD plan of the special permit from the planning board. And I think Mr. Eminent is right that nothing has been purchased out in West Wrentham other than the piece they were about to buy behind the Shellerville store. So with that said, there is very little difference in what I'm going to be proposing on this particular parcel, that the acreage and the multiplication that you've all done with the lot size and all that stuff is essentially being done in the same way. But everything that they refer to as connectivity to this project, they don't quite really touch this project, but through the gas lines in the wildlife corridor, they do connect. But only because of the gas lines that are down there, there's a couple of them down there. But to end it quickly, what I'm saying is Oak Hill Ave, Blackberry Hill, Hillside, Wesley, Whipplebrook, all of those properties were builder related and given to the town for zero. And that's all I want to say.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. Appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Chris, you're muted.
Wow, that's embarrassing. I was muted. Here I am. Thank you for that, Mr. Bailey. Thank you, Mr. Eminent. Anyone else would like to say anything? We're gonna give you one last opportunity, and then we're gonna close this section. So Mike, at this time, we've had the public hearing. The board now has to vote and then close the public hearing. Vote.
Close the public, vote to close the public hearing and then take a vote.
Okay, so at this time, Vice Chair would entertain a motion to close a public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by Selectman Innocent. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Harrington. Michelle did the same thing I did. Do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse.
Rouse, yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Harrington.
Harrington, yes.
Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. We're closed. And now we have to decide as a board. And let's be very clear. We're not deciding whether the town is going to purchase this property on this vote. We're deciding whether we should exercise our right to do so. I just want to be clear on that. And I do think that if I'm hearing this correctly, either Mr. Bailey or whoever the other development team is also planning on, if we vote this and call a special town meeting, that developer is planning on presenting at the town meeting as well, Mike?
That's what it sounds like, and we would want to coordinate with the town moderator in advance if that were the case.
Yeah, let's make sure they know that. So what's the will of the board as we discuss amongst ourselves? You know, I just keep going back to, personally, if we exercise our right tonight, we're not committing to purchase the land. We're committing to moving the ball forward so that we call a special town meeting to let the 11,000 residents of the community make that decision. And I think our board is overly very very democratic. We always want to give the power to the people. We love the control of making these decisions locally. I think that's one of our biggest gripes with our issues with MBTA communities and what have you, is that we want to control our town's destiny. This is an awesome opportunity for us to control our town's destiny, whether we support it or not. So I just want to take a temperature from my board members before we make the motion.
I think you.
Go ahead.
I think you said it perfectly. I don't think this is a me vote, an us vote, a board vote, committee vote. This is all of our votes. This is up to the residents, because it will impact, other groups and other, potential purchases and action items in the future. So this is a vote for all of us residents that would be making that decision.
Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to vote no, but I understand what you're saying, and so I would go to a vote and let's see how it goes.
I appreciate the candor, Bill.
Yeah, I think through you, Mr. Vice Chair, I think it's time to make a motion that we decide whether we want to move the project forward to town meeting or not. So I assume that would be the.
Yes. So with that being said, the vice chair would entertain a motion that the board exercise its option to purchase 2095 West Street contingent upon town meeting approval by sending a notice of exercise to the property owners in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, subset Section 14.
So moved.
So a motion was made by Selectman Harrington. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Selectman Harrington. We have a second by Selectwoman Rouse. Any further discussion? Being none, we'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse.
Rouse, yes.
Okay, Selectman Harrington.
Harrington, yes.
Selectman Anderson.
No.
Anderson's a hard no. Chris Gallo is a yes. So motion carries 3-1, correct? My math is good? Okay. And I just I can't stress this enough. We're not taking a vote tonight to buy the land. We're taking a vote to give you, our peers, our taxpayers, the option to do so. And I think that's our job. But I support Selectman Anderson's decision.
As do I.
It's not an easy one. And I didn't know how I was going to vote coming into the meeting. So I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work and collaboration and respectful dialogue through this in every meeting that we have. We've got a great board and a great town. But yeah, motion carries 3-1. Mike, we'll have to discuss next steps. And then, like you said, get the follow-up vote on our next select board meeting.
Yes, and I'll work with town council to notify the owner.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on. At this time, it looks like we are at tab 8, discussion of select board participation on boards, commissions, and committees. I'm going to turn this over to Mike King for a quick summary on this.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, and I just for the record, we do have an earlier tab on the Board of Registrar interview and appointments that we skipped over.
Oh, thank you so much. Would you suggest we do that first and then go to the those people have probably been waiting.
I would, because some people are on the call to be interviewed.
I apologize to anyone on the call. I totally skipped that with the confusion. I apologize. So guys, I'm sorry. We're going to backtrack and hold off on tab 8 right now. We're going to go to tab 4, and we're going to discuss the Board of Registrars. And Mike, can you give us a quick summary on this as well?
Yes. So there are currently 2 openings on the Board of Registrars, and the process for filling these seats on the Board of Registrars is that there is a notification sent out to the party chairs of both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party to provide a list of 3 names of possible candidates. Those letters were sent out, and names were solicited, and we received nominations for 2 individuals from the Republican Party chair and 1 individual from the Democratic Party chair. Now, the board can decide to make appointments from those lists. However, the state statute states that if 3 names are not provided that by the party, that the board does not necessarily have to choose from the list. So you have 3 people before you tonight. You have the ability to appoint 2 of them, or you can also decide to go out and solicit more names. I will say that, due to timing, there's currently 2 people that will be on the board at the end of the month. So it might make sense to appoint 1 tonight. And you could always, we have the meeting coming up on April 1st. But before we go any further, I just want to talk about makeup of the Board of Registrars. So you can't have representation of more than 2 individuals from the same party. So you can't have more than 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats. In this case, the current makeup is an unenrolled and a Republican. So the board can appoint up to 1 Republican, right? Or it can appoint a combination, a Republican and a Democrat. It can do a combination of 2 Democrats and unenrolled, and then a member of the number party. So there are some options here. And I apologize if this is a little confusing, but I'm happy to walk you all through it and answer any of your questions. And just keep in mind, we do have some people to be interviewed here tonight first.
So how many people do we have to be interviewed tonight, and what is their political party? And then just to I want you to re-summarize, because I'm slightly confused. I'm not as smart as everybody else. I want to know, we can vote for 1 Republican and 1 Democrat tonight?
Well, I do see our town clerk, Cindy Thompson, just turned on her camera, and I believe she might have something to say.
All right, let's let Cindy Thompson. Cindy Thompson, can you enlighten us, please?
Yes, I had currently 3 registrars. 2 have decided to not continue as of March 31st, and it leaves me with 1 Republican registrar at this time. So you do have candidates from both parties, and I do believe that the current registrar that I do have is willing to change her party to be unenrolled if need be.
Okay. So right now on the board, we have 1 Republican. That's it.
Right.
And how many can we have?
You can have 2, no more than 2 from the representation of the same party.
Okay. And the 1 Republican on the board is willing to change their party to unenrolled?
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, we could vote in 2 Republicans. That person changes their
party to unenrolled.
And then we need 2 Democrats?
So I just had a quick question for Cindy. Isn't there a, for lack of a better word, a cooling off period that you can't just immediately change your party? I thought that you had to be unenrolled for a period of 2 years.
I'm not clear on that. I heard that through the grapevine, but I'm not clear on that, Mike.
Okay. If the board was going to vote, it probably should be as it stands right now, and not based on somebody possibly changing their political party.
Right. I agree.
So, and how many, they brought us 2 Republican candidates tonight that potentially are throwing their hat in the ring, correct?
Yes.
And they brought us 1 Democratic candidate tonight?
I believe so.
Okay. So we wouldn't be able to vote both of the Republican candidates in, but we would be able to vote the 1 Democrat in. Is that a fair statement?
That is fair. That is a fair
That's
statement.
fair. Yes.
Okay. Does any of the board members have any questions before we get into the interviews of the candidates?
So Cindy, again, before that person left, it was one Republican, one Democratic.
I have had one Republican and two unenrolled.
They're unenrolled. Okay. So the makeup was of 3.
Yes, it's always 3. And the town clerk serves as the 4th.
Okay.
So tonight, again, just to reiterate, we potentially could choose one of the Republican candidates and one of the Democratic candidates.
Yes.
Or to Mike's point, they both didn't give us 3 names, so we could potentially choose none of them.
And ask them to go.
It says if the local party chairs do not provide lists within 45 days of the request, the select board may appoint a registrar without regard to a list.
What is that?
And part of providing that list is you have to provide the 3 names. So they can't provide one list and force the select board's hand. I double checked with legal counsel on that, and that is their interpretation.
So are they advising us not to, so let's just talk in real situation here. It looks like the Democrats gave us
one name,
Ann Smith, who I think is on, and then the Republicans gave us 2 names, Sean Dooley and Mary Hepburn. They're both on as well.
I see Mary Hepburn.
I'm here.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
Sean Dooley on as well.
I don't believe so.
And do they have to be on this Zoom meeting for us to appoint them?
Historically, the board has wanted to interview candidates before appointment. He did submit an application for appointment because we wanted to confirm that he was indeed interested, and he did so. But that would be at the discretion of the board.
And
Do we need to do this tonight?
So thank you, Mr. Harrington. That was my next.
Sure, you, Mr. Chair.
That was my next question. Seeing as though the Democrats only brought us 1, and one of the Republican candidates isn't on, I don't want to rush a vote to check something off a box and feel like we can do our due diligence to the voters. What are your thoughts on, are we able to take this up at the next meeting, Mike, or?
So,
and Cindy?
Yeah, Cindy, I'm sure Cindy will clarify this as well. Time is of the essence.
Yes, time is of the essence. Both of the 2 members that chose not to continue, their term ends on March 31st, which is the day before your next meeting. That leaves 1 registrar. She works as a full-time ER nurse and only can give me about 5 hours every 3rd week. So which leaves my office registering people to vote, which Ian and myself can register people to vote. There's usually 100 to 150 in the queue every week.
Hold on a second. Yep. Amanda, can you please mute that person who's... All right, thank you. Sorry about that, Cindy. Go ahead.
That's okay. There's usually, so that leaves 1, and then myself and Ian to register people to vote. In the voter registration queue, with all of the opportunities that residents have to register to vote, there's somewhere between 100 and 150 in any given week of people who could be duplicates, who could have just moved to Wrentham, moved out of Wrentham. I mean, it's not an easy task. It definitely is time consuming. My thoughts are, if I could really use because I'm leaving, so lack of training is going to be tough for registrars when they get there. It's just going to leave my office a little tight.
But even if we just push this to the next meeting, is that going to inconvenience you?
No more than it already is right now.
Right. I guess that was the question is, I just want to do this right, Cindy.
Yeah, no, I get you.
You
I get
know?
you. This is the first time I've actually requested the board to do this.
Thank you.
And Mr. Vice Chair, can we ask Cindy for like an overview of the responsibilities so we're all clear
Please,
on
that's a great point.
what's required and what is done by these individuals?
Miss Thompson, do you mind?
Yes, no, there is a Board of Registrars and Election Commission 12-page little handout. And I can, I believe I sent the Democratic Committee a little overview of, how many hours it would be for each week, what your responsibilities would be. So yes, I can recreate that and send it over to the board.
All right, here's my recommendation to the board. I think we need to shelf this for one meeting. We need to regroup, get some more information, and then reach out to the candidates, reach out to the Julie Garland and Dawn Crowley.
Yes.
And ask them for 3 candidates and see if they can provide us 3 candidates so that we can do this the right way for the town and the townspeople. You guys amenable to this?
Yes.
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 Okay.
I am.
Thank you. Mike, do we need to take a formal vote or can you just?
No, I mean, and just the other option too, right? You can go without regard to a list. So you could actually put this out to the general public as a committee interest.
Okay.
So just for, I mean, you
talk
had
to
the
me
option
about
of doing what you'd recommended possibly is going back to the committee chairs, but the lists weren't provided with 3 names. So you can do it without regard to the list.
So could we give both opportunities? Could you go back to the committee chairs, tell them we need more names, and then also open it up to the general public and get, anyone who's interested? But we'd obviously need to know their political affiliation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Mike, can I ask you a question? If that's the case, and we do that, then I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot my train of thought.
No, it's okay. If you think of it, just
that's all right. Sorry.
And I'll say the reason that I'm recommending it is because you can now, because you didn't get the lists in a timely, the lists were provided timely, but they didn't have 3 names. It gives you the option of appointing unenrolled. If you go back to the committee chairs, you won't get any recommendations or candidates who are unenrolled.
Okay.
You put it out to the general public, you may have an opportunity to get someone who steps forward as an unenrolled voter who may be interested in serving.
So could we do both?
So
yes,
if we get 3 names from the Democrats and 3 names from the Republicans, are we able to still go to, are we forced to choose from those 2 lists?
I would say the original list controls, but I'd have to talk to town council for resetting another opportunity.
Okay.
So let's do this, Mike. Let's table this to get some clarification. To your point, I want to know if we have to stick to the 2 lists, have to go back to the 2 party chairs, or if we can open it up to the general public while also giving the 2 party chairs an opportunity to bring forth the 3 candidates that we asked for, or at least, and I apologize to the people that are on here, Mary Hepburn, Ann Smith. I appreciate you coming to this meeting. I just hope you understand that we take our democratic process very, not lightly, and we want to make sure that this is done the right way. So I apologize for any inconvenience this has caused you.
Oh, no problem.
And the other thing, through you, Mr. Vice Chair, maybe Mike, would it be possible if you just put like a bullet point specific so that we could follow it better and understand it a little bit better?
Yeah, I can provide you with your options.
Thank you. That's
Mr.
great.
Harrington's doing that for me, Mike, because again, I'm not the smartest guy on the call, so I need things broken down. I'm a very visual learner. So let's go ahead and table that. And do we need to take a formal vote, Mike, to table it, or just move on to the next agenda item? Move on, Cindy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not a public hearing, so I think you could just, take the discussion and move it to the next agenda.
Mike, is that good with you?
Yeah, we can bring this back for the April 1st meeting.
Okay, done. Whew, let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm sorry we couldn't be more help, but we're on it and we'll get
You're
it.
welcome.
Okay. Next, we're gonna go to, I didn't skip anything else, right? It looks like we're gonna go to tab 8, which is discussion of select board participation in other boards, commissions, and committees. This time, I'd like to turn it over to Mike King to give us a quick update on this.
At a previous meeting, there was discussion by the select board on reviewing some of the town bylaws and looking at select board participation of our committees that are called out in the bylaws, because it became to our attention that there were select board seats on certain committees that weren't filled. And it was decided that rather than deciding to fill those seats at that time, to talk to those committees and see if they believe that it was necessary for there to be the select board representation, because any committee could come before the select board and provide a report as well. So I reached out to the landscape committee chair, and I also reached out to, because there's a select board seat on the landscape committee. And then additionally, I reached out to Liz Harkins over at Cable 8, because there's a cable advisory non-voting liaison that's a select board member, to get their feedback in regards to whether they really felt it was necessary for a select board member to fill those seats. The feedback was no, it was not necessary. Obviously good communication is encouraged, and they would, they'd be more than happy to come before the select board and provide updates. So what that means is, since we have a town meeting coming up on June 2nd, is we could draft a warrant article to amend the bylaws to remove those select board seats on those committees if the select board was interested in doing so. And I can stop there. I can go to the second piece, Mr. Vice Chair, in terms of
I'd say if everyone's okay, you could go to the second piece. If anyone wants you to stop, please let Mr. King know. I'd say go ahead.
All right. There is an additional committee that's appointed by the town moderator, which is the General Bylaw Review Committee. There is a select board seat on that committee. I believe it would be encouraged for a select board member to be represented on that. What that committee does is it reviews bylaws that are submitted to town meeting for consideration and votes on whether or not to recommend them. It would be good, especially in this case, for the select board to provide context on some of those, and be able to have a seat at the table when it comes to amending any bylaws for the town. So what could be done is the select board could recommend a member to serve on that committee to the moderator, because it is the moderator's appointment. I have spoken with the moderator, and he would be welcome to having a recommendation from the select board for somebody to serve on that committee.
Okay, so we have one committee that we need a volunteer for, and then we have a couple of the other boards and commissions that respectfully say they don't need us, and they can just come to a meeting if they do need us. So you're looking for us to make a recommendation or someone step up relating to that one committee run by the moderator. And then you're also, how would we then would we have to do warrant items to get the select board liaison off of those other boards and commissions, Mike?
Yes. So administration would draft warrant articles that will be included for the town on the town meeting warrant for the select board's review, because then the select board could review and decide whether or not to approve them to be included on the town meeting warrant. But we would draft those internally.
Okay. All right, so let's do it.
Do we do this now versus after election?
So
you're asking that because we have one member, current member, who's up for election, and then we have an open seat. Technically. It's a great question.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd strongly suggest we wait till after the election.
Mike King, what are your thoughts on that?
So in terms of the bylaw updates, not necessarily the bylaw committee seat, April 3rd is the select board established due date for any town meeting warrant submittals. So if we were going to draft something, we would want to submit it to be in line with April 3rd. In terms of the bylaw seat, that could wait till after the election, because the bylaw committee is not going to be meeting right away to review any proposed changes.
So would the will of the board be wait on the seat, but move forward with the articles to clean up the liaison positions, if you will?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, that would be my recommendation.
Selectman Anderson, what do you think?
I concur.
Selectwoman Rouse, what do you think?
Same.
Okay. So Mike, what do we need to take a formal vote, or what do
You know, I don't believe a vote's necessary. Everybody's okay with drafting it, because keep in mind, whoever's on the board is going to be approving the warrant, which would include this. So they'd actually technically have a say still on any of these bylaw updates, because they'd be deciding whether or not they think it would be appropriate to go to town meeting.
Okay, I would say then let's move forward per the will of the board.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Okay. Moving right along, tab number 9, update on MBTA communities. Mr. King, because you're doing such a great job tonight, we're going to let you proceed. Give us a quick update on any new information relating to MBTA communities.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So on March 6th, the town commenced legal action in Superior Court against the Commonwealth, seeking relief from enforcement of the MBTA zoning law. The Select Board determined that the most practical and fiscally responsible way to compel the Commonwealth to provide financial impact information related to compliance with the law was to file a suit in Superior Court. The legal action also seeks to relieve the town from the duty of complying with the statute until the Commonwealth provides funding to cover the increased budgetary costs of compliance. Wrentham is actually one of 5 communities that have filed suit in Superior Court. The other 4 are Marshfield, Middleborough, Middleton, and Hanson. The 5 individual cases have been consolidated into a single hearing that is scheduled to take place on April 2nd at 9 a.m. at the Plymouth Superior Court. Late this afternoon, just before this meeting, Town Council received a copy of the Commonwealth's motion to dismiss in opposition to motions for the injunctions that the towns have made, which are currently being reviewed. We will have further updates once the hearing is held on April 2nd.
Is that everything?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just a couple quick questions. I know our town council's not on, but a motion to dismiss is a pretty common practice.
It was anticipated.
Okay, so that's nothing that we didn't see coming.
Correct.
And just for reference, we think that because we're still waiting on the fiscal impact analysis that we still haven't received yet. When you alluded to, Mike, that the board thinks that this is the most fiscally responsible way, we're just trying to get the voters the information that they need so that we can make a decision one way or another. Due to the Milton ruling, and please feel free to chime in anytime I'm misspeaking here, but my understanding is due to the Milton ruling, the SJC told the state that they went about this the wrong way, and they needed to do a couple of things. One of them was to give us this fiscal impact analysis, or small business impact analysis, both of which we still haven't had. And they were supposed to, the EOHLC, if I'm not mistaken, if I said that correctly, was supposed to give the auditor, due to the unfunded mandate determination, information so that the auditor could actually give us the fiscal impact analysis that we've been asking for. So far, am I speaking correctly, or do I need to?
You're correct. Due to the Milton case, they had the state EOHLC had to re-promulgate the regulations, and part of promulgating those regulations is you have to do a public sector impact and a small business impact. And the state auditor is saying that they need that information in order to provide a determination to the town of Wrentham.
So people are telling us that we need to follow the law and just vote this thing in. But no one's saying to the state they also need to follow the law and give us the information that we need so that our voters can make the right decision. I just want to call that out. Okay. We have no idea. We did our own internal fiscal impact analysis, and we see this thing costing us, if fully built and zoned, you know, a delta of anywhere, let's just say a multi-million-dollar delta per year that the taxpayers would not come out of the levy. It would have to be a debt exclusion and taxes raised every single year to cover this deficit based on our own internal figures. Is that a fair statement, Mr. King?
Yeah, based on the analysis, you'd be looking at an override
Yep, every year.
to cover the annual budgetary costs, because it's not, we wouldn't see them as one-time costs. We would see them as annual
Recurring.
budget costs. So you'd have to do an override to permanently increase the tax levy to cover those costs in the budget.
And what I'm doing here, folks, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I'm just trying to re-explain why we thought the most fiscally responsible thing we could do is to file in Superior Court for this exemption, because we can't get the information that we need to make a decision. And if they're not going to give us the information that we need to make a decision, then we think it's only fair for a judge to grant us relief of having to comply until we get such information. Is that another fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. With that being said, I'd like to open it up to the other board members to see if anyone else has anything to add or comment or ask of you, Mr. King, and we'll start with Selectwoman Rouse.
No further questions. Thank you.
Selectman Anderson.
No further questions. I thought Mike did a good job explaining it.
Just Mike?
Yes. Yes.
Heard that. Selectman Harrington.
Nothing further to add. Great job, Mike King and Vice Chair.
Thank you. Clearly, I need a positive affirmation.
Your love language.
Yeah, yes, my love language. And that's, yeah, I don't have anything to add. So thank you for that update. At this time, we're gonna, if no one has anything else to add from the board regarding MBTA communities, we're gonna now go to our own version of public comment, which is tab 10. At this time, any member from the public who's on this call can raise their hand, can unmute, and can state their name and address and make any public comment you want. And we will time you to please keep it to 2 minutes. And yeah, please go ahead at this time. Public comment. Again, this board strives to be very transparent. We want to give our voters as much access. We want everyone to feel like they have a say. We try to explain every decision we make. And we want to hear from our voters, our constituents. So let the record show no one raised their hand for public comment. It's time we will move on to tab 11. And I believe that is the town manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. A few updates. So I just want to bring to the board attention and also the community in general that the ability for municipalities to have remote and hybrid meetings is set to expire on March 31st. The House did pass legislation yesterday to extend these meeting options. We are now waiting for action in the Senate. There's been a lot of advocacy in terms of extending the ability for municipalities to hold their boards and committee meetings via remote and hybrid means. But as of right now, with about 2 weeks to go at the end of the month, it has not been finalized. So that's something we're watching very closely, especially with the select board's next meeting scheduled for April 1st. Additionally, the 20 Hancock Street land purchase was completed last week. The town now owns the 15-acre property and can begin siting a new well in West Wrentham. I have a few updates on Sweat Park. So at its March 11th meeting, the CPC voted in favor to move the Sweat Park electrical lighting project forward so that it can appear on the next town meeting warrant, which, if the select board calls a special town meeting next week, it could be in May. This could be a part of that warrant possibly. This phase of the project, if approved by town meeting, would include installing lighting for the sports courts, walkways, and stairs. Lighting for Sweat Park was an adult when the project went out to bid, but was previously not awarded due to costs exceeding available funds for the renovation. Also, as an additional update for the Sweat Park renovation project, work has restarted at the site with the masons working on the stairs, and the installation of the granite steps is currently ongoing. Once the stairs are complete, next steps would include for the project the top coat for the sports courts and pouring the remaining walkways. And the last update I have for tonight is the installation of the electric vehicle chargers at the center school lot began this week. Crews are going to be pouring the pad for the transformer and installing the EV charger equipment. Once this is done, National Grid will then install the transformer, and the EV chargers will subsequently be connected before that transformer is then energized. Those are my updates, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you for that. Any questions for our town manager on his town manager report before we move into executive session?
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, through you, if I could just ask Mike a question. So Mike, the Sweat Park, do we have a time frame for when that project could be complete?
Yes, so if not including the electrical, which we're hoping to get approved at town meeting, it could be finished as early as May.
Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
Selectman Innocent is just trying to schedule his ribbon cutting ceremony, events for the spring.
Absolutely.
Okay, at this time, we need to go into executive session, so motion must be made. Okay, so at this time, the vice chair would entertain a motion to move into executive session, subject to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A3, to discuss with respect to collective bargaining and/or litigation. Yeah, that was my motion, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Selectman Innocent, second by Selectman Harrington. We'll do a roll call vote. Selectwoman Rouse,
Rouse, yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Harrington,
Harrington, yes.
Gallo, yes. Motion carries 4-0. We're in executive session,
Is there a
please.
few more people that need to?
Yeah, we're gonna boot them. Thank you all for coming. We're gonna have to kick you out now.
Chief Marino will be staying on to discuss the
Don't
fire
kick out
MOA.
Marino.
Who's this? Marino Anderson, Cable 8. Cable 8.
Yep, they'll leave. Thanks, Cable 8.
Okay.
Sorry